Hey, it is your buddy, Peace and Harmony, with you here today. Much love going out to all the beautiful, empowered harmonizers. We are zooming in and focusing in on a great viewer question, and that is to ask about all the changes that they have gone through in order to accommodate a female psychopath, and there are then second guessing themselves and whether they have made the right decision. When we talk about sort of making changes for others, oftentimes I would say in a psychopathic relationship, you will begin changing your boundaries, your standards, your values, your perspective in order to accommodate or change to better suit their needs. In other words, because of the flippant comments oftentimes that they will make that are generally out of context, that are designed to pinpoint or trigger you. In other words, they will say something that is designed to make you think that you are inadequate and there's something you must change in order to be acceptable or presentable to them. In other words, essentially making yourself easier to manipulate for them. So if you found yourself changing to suit a female psychopath, in other words, usually there's a feeling of rejection, not being accepted. They'll give you a very painful rejection or really a lack of validation, because when we talk about a female psychopath, we're talking about someone who does not have a conscience. They don't have a sense of right or wrong. They don't have a moral fiber. They don't have a moral sort of due north or compass, if you will. They're not governed by that. They don't behave according to those tenets. They don't, that's not a priority for them. A female psychopath really has an absence of fear as well, and an absence of a different sort of emotional spectrum than most people. So really one of the major issues with someone who is antisocial or psychopathic is they don't really have any regret or remorse for things that really, that you should learn from, that they have, things that they regret, decisions, bad decisions, things that they feel remorseful about, regret, I shouldn't have done that. That was a bad decision. And then, change and learn, or learn and change, and then they won't continue to engage in that behavior. The problem with the female psychopath is why they require so much accommodation is because of this very mechanism. Because of a lack of conscience, they really don't have a sense of right or wrong, sort of lawfulness or following the rules or the protocol. They feel that that is for people who are quote unquote too sensitive, or the rest of everybody else. They have this sort of entitlement that they help themselves to certain things and transgression of certain boundaries and standards, which most people would not engage in because they would feel regret, because they would feel bad, because they would feel remorse. That is against the law. That is wrong. So a female psychopath doesn't really have that sort of emotional repertoire. And a lot of people in the beginning, I think they are admiring of this trait of a female psychopath. So during the love bombing, they say, wow, this person is so strong. Wow, this person is a big risk taker. And we're not talking about calculated risks, like you're trying to take a risk in business or, things of that. We're talking about really with other people. Risks with exploiting other people, taking advantage of others, saying things that are hurtful, things that could be ruinous or not, cause a lot of pain and trouble in somebody's life. Most people would not want to incur or create this sort of transgression or trespassing against another, you might say. However, the psychopath, they don't really perceive these sort of rules. They don't have this sort of respect. They don't acknowledge and validate. So it becomes a real vicious cycle when you're in a relationship with a psychopath, because they feel that they can sort of transgress and, and has sort of a violation energy because they don't feel remorse, they don't feel regret, they don't feel a sense of right or wrong about how they treat people. And because of that, not only is that an issue which has structural formations and differences in their brain, particularly an inactivity in the amygdala, which is the fight or flight center. There's an inactivity, a smaller size, less activity, so they don't really feel fear when really they should be afraid. They will take risks that most people would say, now that is too risky. That is, taking it too far. And we're talking about really where you could hurt or harm another people, make a real issue in their life. They could lose their business, they could lose their home, they could lose their family, they could lose their bank account, they could lose this, that, or the other thing. Usually there is something that other person will then be something very important to them that they are not able to have, become, be, or possess. So, and the psychopath sort of knows this by observation, but they sort of have this need for power and control, and really they have a propensity towards sort of, taking pleasure from other people's hurt. So, in other words, they will then say things which will then cause people to not want to displease them. In other words, you're too sensitive or something of that nature, like a viewer had stated, you're too sensitive, I can't tell you anything. So in other words, then that person has to, kind of feels guilty, remorse, or regret that they are in the wrong. And so they end up numbing themselves or making themselves callous or sacrificing their values in order to accommodate. So the psychopath knows that they will be able to sort of create this control over others through pushing their buttons. They find what makes people feel guilty, what makes people feel insecure, or to, the flip side, what gives people security, and they will use this, against them. Namely, it will cause a cognitive dissonance where, you begin to become numb to the very thing that you should become sensitive to, i.e. your self-preservation. Saying, what, that is wrong, that is not good for me. So it becomes then this sort of real vicious cycle. And you need to be able to break the cycle. You need to be able to understand when you have not had your needs met, when you have not been fulfilled, when you have been disrespected, mistreated, had your vulnerability taken advantage of. Once again, as a way to deplete, not really out of necessity, although, so I think for our viewers, I want you to understand that they will engage in this so that you will become sort of numb and then sort of keep giving, keep pulling the wool over your eyes. Sort of that pathological lying really becomes a norm for them. And a lot of people feel that that they then feel that there is something inadequate about them and then they can't keep up. So this is something that you should not force or not feel that you have to betray yourself in order to keep the relationship going. You should not have to live in self-betrayal, denial, sort of swallowing too much pain in order, love is patient and love is kind. So think about that in the context of your relationship. And has this person rushed you? Have they, been too stressful, too pressurized? Especially the female psychopath, it can be very distracting, I think, for a lot of men. They will drop everything and sort of lose perspective from this. So regain your perspective, regain your I am, and look at, why you are unhappy and what makes you unhappy, and know what makes you tick, and look at the behaviors then that you have engaged in that have been contrary to that, so you can understand what behavioral changes or decisions you need to make to feel happier, sort of more content, and sort of back underneath your own skin, back in alignment with your own values, where you're not afraid of over giving or over obligating to someone who is of this type of individual. This is your buddy, Peace and Harmony, with you here today, and I hope that these videos do help. Please share, please subscribe, and for goodness sake, please donate for more great tools, videos, discussion, and support. Peace be with you, and have a beautiful day.